Alexander the Macedonian, the son of Philip, was king of Greece. Alexander marched from the land of Greece and conquered Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and became king in his place. He fought in many campaigns, captured many fortresses, and put the local kings to death. He campaigned throughout the known world, plundering the nations, and all the nations of the world submitted to him. Alexander's heart was filled with pride, for he had gathered a powerful and mighty army and now ruled many nations and kingdoms, all of which paid him a tribute tax. But after all his great conquests, Alexander became very sick and was confined to his bed. When he knew he was dying, he called for his close friends, noblemen who had grown up with him, and he divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. At his death, Alexander had reigned for 12 years. Each of his close friends took over the region assigned to him, and each one crowned himself after Alexander's death. They and their descendants ruled for many years, spreading evil throughout the earth. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus, was a sinful descendant of these rulers. He had been a hostage in Rome before rising to the throne in the 137th year of Greek rule. In those days there were some ungodly Jews who tried to lead many astray. They said, "Let's make an agreement with the Gentiles around us, for since we separated ourselves from them, disaster has followed after disaster." Many thought this was good advice, so they went to the king, who authorized them to introduce Gentile practices. In Jerusalem, they built an education complex for promoting Greek culture, as was customarily done among the Gentiles. They hid the fact that they were circumcised, abandoned their holy covenant with God, and joined with the Gentiles, becoming slaves to evil. Once Antiochus Epiphanes consolidated his power, he decided to make himself king of Egypt as well so that he might rule over 2 kingdoms. He invaded Egypt with a massive army, chariots, elephants, and horsemen, and a large fleet. He attacked Ptolemy Philometor, king of Egypt, who turned and fled in terror, leaving behind many casualties. Antiochus captured the fortified cities of Egypt and plundered the entire land. After conquering Egypt in the 143rd year of Greek rule, Antiochus returned to Israel with his powerful force and marched into Jerusalem. He arrogantly entered the temple sanctuary and carried away the gold incense altar, the lampstand for light and all its accessories, the table of the bread of the presence, the cups used for making drink offerings, the bowls, the gold incense burners, the curtain, the crowns, and the gold decoration that was on the front of the temple. He stripped the temple of everything of value. He took the silver and gold and the precious vessels as well as all the hidden treasures he could find. When he had gathered everything of value, he returned to his own country. He had murdered many people and arrogantly bragged about it. Throughout Israel, people mourned deeply, and the rulers and elders grieved. Young women and young men grew weak, and the beauty of women faded. Every bridegroom began to lament, and every bride mourned in her bridal chamber. The land trembled for its residents, and all Israel was filled with shame. 2 years later, King Antiochus sent his chief tax collector to the towns of Judea, and he arrived at Jerusalem with a massive force. He deceived the people by speaking peaceful words, thus gaining their trust. But suddenly he attacked the city and killed many of the Israelites. He plundered the city, set it on fire, and tore down its houses and walls. He took women and children captive and carried away their livestock. He rebuilt and fortified the city of David with a great wall and strong towers, and it became their citadel. He manned and strengthened the fortifications with sinful and wicked men. They stored up weapons and provisions and collected there the wealth he and his men plundered from Jerusalem. And so they became a perpetual threat to Israel. The citadel became an ambush for the temple, an ever-present evil in Israel. They murdered the innocent all around the sanctuary. They even defiled the holy place. Because of them, the residents of Jerusalem fled, and the city became the home of foreigners. Jerusalem became a stranger to her own offspring, and her children abandoned her. Her temple became as barren as a desert. Her festivals were turned to mourning. Her Sabbaths were turned to days of shame. Her honor was turned to reproach. Her dishonor was as great as her former glory. Her happiness was turned to grief. King Antiochus issued a proclamation that his entire kingdom should be united as one people and that each nation should renounce its own customs. The Gentiles accepted this command of the king, and many Israelites also willingly followed his religion. They offered sacrifices to idols and no longer observed the Sabbath. The king sent messengers with letters to Jerusalem and to all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow the foreign customs of his kingdom. He banned burnt offerings, sacrifices, and drink offerings in the temple, and he prohibited keeping the Sabbath and celebrating religious festivals. He defiled the temple and the priests. He ordered altars, temples, and idols to be built, and pigs and other ceremonially unclean animals to be sacrificed. Their sons were not to be circumcised, and they were to practice all kinds of unclean and vile customs so that they would forget to keep the law of Moses. Anyone who failed to obey the king's command would be put to death. Antiochus sent this command to his whole kingdom. He appointed officers to enforce his policies, and he commanded all the towns of Judea to take turns offering pagan sacrifices. Many of the people who abandoned the law of Moses joined in these sacrifices and committed evil deeds. They forced the faithful Israelites to hide in any possible place of refuge. On the 6th of December in the 145th year of Greek rule, the king and his forces set up a sacrilegious object causing desecration on top of the altar for burnt offerings, and they built pagan altars in the surrounding Judean towns. They burned incense and offered sacrifices at the doors of the houses and in the streets. Whenever a copy of the book of the law was found, it was torn up and burned. By the king's decree, they put to death anyone found with a copy of the Book of the Covenant or anyone discovered following the law of Moses. Each month they punished any Israelites who were caught remaining in the towns, for on the 25th day of each month they offered sacrifices on the pagan altar that stood on top of the altar of burnt offering. By order of the king, women who had their sons circumcised were put to death with their babies hung around their necks. And all their families and everyone else who took part in the circumcisions were killed with them. Yet there were many Israelites who refused to eat unclean food and who welcomed death rather than be defiled by food, profaning the Holy Covenant. So a time of great trouble had come upon Israel.